So previously in 2014, the subject had subject learning outcomes which were focusing on content. So the entire subject was focusing on what we think first year students need to know in terms of the content of the discipline. What we did with the new subject, the subject learning outcomes are now focusing on these core skills. And these core skills are specific to the entire discipline, not just the subject. So what we have is we have subject learning outcomes totally disconnected from the content, but in the same time we're taking these core skills and applying it within the context of the subject. Once we had our subject learning outcomes and once we've designed the main sort of assessment task groups, because what we decided to do is to have 3 groups of assessment tasks which are specifically addressing each 3 of the skills. After having that, we were thinking about how to sort of build smaller tasks within those groups. And instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, essentially I looked at how we do things otherwise. And we would never, for example, submit a manuscript to a journal without first having a colleague read it and provide feedback. In the same time, we would never let our students submit a manuscript without us reading it first and having a couple of iterations and making it better. So why not have the same with the assessment tasks for our undergraduate students? But then, so once we have this, we thought, well, why not also increase the difficulty level, so scaffold the different assessment tasks as we move on. And that's how we built in feedback loops, where students are not only provided feedback, but they're required to explicitly incorporate that feedback in the next submission and show proof of having acted on that feedback as part of the actual assessment task. At the very beginning, students were quite surprised and didn't know how to sort of handle this whole idea of receiving feedback and then having to resubmit the assessment task. But as we were getting towards the end of the subject, students actually started soliciting feedback rather than before submitting their work, they would either send an email or use the online forum to request some feedback on their prior work. Also, with some of the assessment tasks where there were similarities in what they had to do, they would email me and ask whether I could mark the assessments earlier so that they have enough time to incorporate the feedback or to work on the feedback and use it for their next assessment task. Obviously, I acknowledge that change is difficult in that it is more work. And especially as as early career researchers or early career staff at the university, we all wish to focus on research. And teaching is sort of, in a way, a side project. But there's a positive attitude towards teaching at the university. Teaching is very highly valued at this university. And obviously, if somebody wishes to change their subject, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of, it is seen very positively by the university. And obviously, faculty, schools, and the university itself has mechanisms in place for facilitating that change. So one should not feel isolated. One should see refreshing a subject as something positive, which will have its benefits and will be supported. But also, it is quite a pleasant project. It's a creative process essentially, and that can be very pleasant.